Hello, I'm Chris O. Welcome to my little presentation on thinking and intelligence. You may be thinking, what is up with that? Just like Keenan Thompson. And today I'm going to tell you what's up with that. So, thinking and intelligence, what is it? Well, thinking is basically cognition. Our goal as psychologists, even though we're amateur psychologists, is to understand the what, the why, and the how of cognition, right? So, what do we think? Why do we think those things? And how do we think them? Cognition includes information from not only from our senses, but also our memories and our emotions, so that you bring a more personal understanding to whatever topic is at hand. And basically the concept here is that, person X approaches a problem differently from person Y. Our brain uses concepts and prototypes to more readily understand things that we haven't yet comprehended, right? So a concept is a broad understanding of a topic that allows you to make inferences and educated guesses. So an example of this is like if you have a firm grasp of the concepts of like US history, for example, you're going to have a better answer to a question that you don't know the answer to because you've been paying attention in class, etc. You kind of know what's going on. You have a grasp of the general concept of US history at that point in time, so you can make a good guess at that answer. Another thing, as I said, prototypes. These are the most readily available example of a concept. So Rosa Parks is a prototype of the concept of civil disobedience. Language. Language is another key component of thinking, and it allows us to communicate ideas to other people, and it's distinct to humans among organisms. Humans are biologically predisposed to develop language skills, and children learn language with little effort. Language learning becomes more difficult as age increases. So if you go to a foreign country and you're 3 years old, you're like most definitely going to become fluent in that language if you live there for any significant period of time. But if you're 40 and you move to that foreign country, you're probably going to like get bits and pieces of the language. You're going to be able to, get by, but you're not going to become fluent. The way we learn language, children first learn the general rules of language, and then over time, they learn the exception to these rules. So an example of this is like babies, if they wanted to talk about multiple moose, they would say mooses, right? Because generally, when you want to make something plural, you add an S at the end. But as an 18-year-old or whoever's watching this video, you know that the plural of moose is just moose. So you had to learn that exception. And then another interesting thing, the way our languages operate can affect our abilities to understand concepts such as time. Like different cultures who have different languages talk about things in a different way and therefore understand them in a different way. Problem solving, another key component of thinking. There are three general methods of problem solving, right? There's trial and error, which is like our doggy friend in the top left, right? He's got no idea what he's doing, so he's just going to try and enter his password and hope for the best. If it doesn't work, he's going to keep trying, maybe try different things. Algorithm. So this is like a set, like instruction manual basically for trying to solve a problem. Our little green men up here in the top right corner, they're going to do exactly what they're supposed to do to solve a given problem, right? They're programmed to do this. That's why algorithms are popular in computer science, etc. A heuristic is a more general strategy where you can break something down and then tackle smaller steps, right? So this is like an example, like the problem might be that you have a research paper, so you would approach it with a more heuristic method and break it down and then kind of complete small things at a time. Examples of this are working backwards and following rules of thumb. As humans, we often fixate on problems we can't solve even when there's little benefit to solving the problem. This is called a mental set. And then also functional fixedness is where you kind of see something as only capable of what it's designed for, right? So this is an example, like if I'm using a pencil, I'm like, I want to write with that pencil, right? I don't want to, I don't think of that pencil as like something that should be thrown or something that should be like used to repair a sink, right? That's pencils for writing. And then anchoring bias leads us to focus on one central aspect of a problem rather than the problem as a whole, probably because we understand that aspect. So that kind of prevents you from addressing it, like coming to a more complete solution. And then the availability heuristic leads us to rely on what we already know to solve a problem. Intelligence. So there are varying models of intelligence, but the one that I like best, well, not like best, the one that's kind of easiest to understand here is the diagram in the top right. So there's analytical intelligence, practical intelligence, and creative intelligence. Practical intelligence makes sense, right? Street smarts. Analytical intelligence is like problem solving. That's what gets tested, in your classes at school. And there's creative intelligence. So that's kind of the ability to come up with non-prescribed solutions, look past anchoring bias and availability heuristic to arrive at a unique solution. There's also emotional intelligence, right? This is empathy and sympathy. So the ability to like be in touch with others' emotions, your own emotions, and generally have good social skills. Then we have measures of intelligence, right? This goes with this Leonard meme here on the left. IQ tests have been historically the most concrete measure of intelligence, but psychologists really still and have debated whether or not they actually measure anything useful. I'm going to argue that they are somewhat useful, right? In that they've been useful in addressing developmental and educational abnormalities because they can help educators and doctors come to the root of a problem, right? So if someone, you can see here this line through the middle at the 100. So if someone has a very low IQ, right, that might not mean that they're objectively not smart, but it does mean that given academic and kind of educational structures that are in place, they're going to need additional support because the average is 100. We also have sources of intelligence, right? So scientists argue about whether or not, scientists and psychologists argue about whether or not intelligence is genetic. The majority of research basically points to the idea that it's somewhat genetic, but it's mainly influenced by the environment in which a child develops. One idea is that your potential intelligence is a static value. So if that average is 100, let's say your potential is like 120. But then depending on the environment in which you develop, you might not reach that max ceiling kind of, and then you'll end up with an IQ score, something like 100 or 89 or whatever. Research has also shown a correlation between lower socioeconomic status and lower IQ scores. So this is further evidence to the idea that your environment in which you develop has more of an effect on your intelligence than your genetics. And lastly, we have learning disabilities. So I've included here, oh, the image isn't working. Basically, it's just like reflected words. It's kind of an example of dyslexia, which is one of the most common learning disabilities. Another one is dysgraphia, which is where you have difficulty writing legibly. And one thing I didn't know about learning disabilities is that they're more common in people with high IQs. So if you enjoyed this, I know I enjoyed making it. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy your psych class. It's awesome. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you. See ya.